Hi, it's Nick on the 12th of July. Hope all is good with you. Continuing this week's theme of moving from a shadow life to your true calling. Yesterday I was talking about the idea of, the biggest kind of challenge for most of us is just the harshness of the inner critic that we have. The way we judge ourselves so harshly generally. I'm not saying everybody does that, and not everybody does it all the time, but in my experience many of us have a harsh inner judge. We have a harsh inner critic. And on Monday I shared the story of realizing that I was living a shadow life and how I wanted to move from being the supporter of other people's messages and speaking and writing to being a speaker and a writer and a messenger myself. And I suppose, now 20 odd years after that insight that I had about just to the degree that I was living a shadow life. When I look back on the last 20 years, I think the thing that I've probably learned most as a way through is that this is a process of what I would call recovery. Now, there are a lot of kind of formal processes of recovery if you're recovering from an addiction to a substance or addiction to kind of relationships. I would say that what I've probably been recovering from is self-judgment, is to some extent self-loathing, even at times a kind of self-hating. It's been the journey from being so hard on myself to recovering a sense of self-love, a sense of self-validation, a sense of self-acknowledgement. And I think that is the journey for most of us. I touched on this yesterday, but disinvesting in the amount of judgment we have on ourselves and criticism that we have of ourselves. And little by little being able to really become our own friend, our own champion, our own supporter, our own compassionate parent, our own kind of encourager, if you like. And that is recovery, and on my journey of recovery over the last 20 years, there have been times when I feel like I've been in fairly smooth waters, and then times when I feel like I've just, done hatchet jobs on myself again and gone back into self-judgment and self-loathing and all those things. So I say that not to kind of depress you, but to say that to kind of inspire that it is a process of recovery, because I believed 20 years ago, now I've had this insight, my whole life can change. And my whole life has changed as a result of that insight, but only step by step by step, decision by decision by decision. Recovering from almost an addiction to self-judgment and self-criticism. I don't know if you can resonate with that, or whether I'm just kind of exposing my deep inner psychic wounds to you. But as I've spoken to thousands of people over the last few years and shared this kind of stuff, most people kind of go, yeah, I do that too. I just don't let anybody see it. So I think we all do this. So for me, it's a process of developing this, as I said yesterday, the kind of nurturing parent, this loving, self-loving, self-supporting part of ourselves that encourages us to blossom, encourages us to explore our innate talents and abilities, to allow ourselves to blossom into what we can be, rather than judge ourselves for what we haven't been so far, or how we kind of gave up on ourselves, because I think many of us probably kind of gave up on ourselves when we were younger. So we can spend our whole life beating ourselves up for that, or we can go, I want to recover where I gave up on myself and become more of my true self. And for me, that's, having a more nurturing parent now is also allowing for playfulness, for creativity, for exploring, for not needing to get things right, for not needing to be perfect. So I'm certainly in recovery. And my suggestion is, even if you're not you don't have to be in any kind of formal recovery program, but I would suggest that you just see this as a process of recovery. And sometimes your recovery is going well, and sometimes you slide back into old habits and patterns of being tough on yourself. But that is the journey as far as I can tell it. And, when I look and talk to other people, that's it. There isn't another path. That is the path. Well, there are other paths, but, they're all forms of recovery, really. So I hope that's helpful. Be back tomorrow with another thought on this idea of how we move from our shadow calling to our true calling. All right, God bless. Have a good day. Bye-bye.